It's on. Good evening, garden fans. How y'all doing today? Welcome back to the Permaculture Homestead. Hope everything's been good with you. In tonight's live stream, we are continuing our reading of the Permaculture Design Manual. I've got some new streaming equipment. That way you can read along with me and see some of the captions as we proceed forward into Chapter 2. I'm going to do the best I can trying to get through 2-1 and 2.2. Maybe we'll get to 2.3. I'm not 100% positive. Um, Next week we'll pick up where we left off, and I'm thinking Saturday at 8:30 is going to be our go-to time moving forward through the rest of the spring, through summer, and through the rest of the year. It's going to be a lot of reading we got ahead of us. Anyway, let's get into it. Some housekeeping. I got my wife as the moderator. She'll be answering any questions you got. Um, Appreciate you, honey. Thanks for helping out. And let's get to it, garden fans. Let's just keep on plowing through some material here for those of you who have never read it before. Here we go. Chapter 2, Concepts and Themes in Design. The world teeters on the threshold of revolution. If it is a bloody revolution, it is all over. The alternative is a design science revolution. Design science produces so much performance per unit of resource invested as to take care of all human needs. That's a quote by Buckminster Fuller. All living organisms are open systems. That is to say, they maintain their complex forms and functions through continuous exchanges of energies and materials with their environment. Instead of running down like a mechanical clock that dissipates its energy through friction, the living organism is constantly building up more complex substances from the substance it feeds on. More complex forms of energies from the energies it absorbs, and more complex patterns of information, perceptions, feelings, thoughts from the input of its receptor organs. That is Arthur Kessler, 1967, The Ghost in the Machine. And here we get into Bill's writing. Most thermodynamic problems concern closed systems, where the reactions take place in confinement and can be reversed. An example is the expansion and compression of gas in a cylinder. But in an open system, energy is gained or lost irreversibly, and the system, its environment, or both, are changed by the interaction. The second law of thermodynamics states that energy tends to dissipate and organized systems drift inevitably towards entropy or chaos. In seeming violation of that law, biological systems tend to become increasingly complex and efficient. Lovelock shows that the biosphere, or Gaia as he calls it, actually created those conditions that are required for its support, and systematically builds up the stock of materials that it requires to move towards increasing complexity, diversity, and stability. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. To harm the earth is to heap contempt upon the Creator. Contaminate your bed, and you will one night suffocate in your own waste. That's a nice little quote there from Chief Seattle, 1854, responding to a U.S. government offer to buy Indian land. Wow. Here we go. Let's get to the meat of the matter here. 2.1, here's the intro. It is alarming that in Western society no popular body or directives have arisen to replace the injunctions of tribal taboo and myth. When we left tribal life, we left it with all guides to sensible behavior in the natural world, of which we are part and in which we live and die. More to the point, by never having the time or common sense to evolve new or current guiding directives, we have forgotten how to evolve self-regulating systems. Hence, the call for a society in which we are all designers, based on an ethical and applied education, with a clear concept of life ethics. The Gaia hypothesis, as formulated by James Lovelock, is that the Earth less and less appears to behave like a material assembly, and more appears to act as a thought process. Even in the inanimate world, we are dealing with a life force, and our acts are of great effect. The reaction of the earth is to restore equilibrium and balance. If we maltreat, overload, deform, or deflect natural systems and processes, then we will get a reaction, and this reaction may have long-term consequences. Don't do anything unless you've thought out all its consequences and advantages. Aboriginal cultures used myth to show how unnecessary acts and unthinking destruction of elements brings about catastrophe and suffering. The usual structure of myth has these sequences. 1. A willful act of an individual or group. 2. A transmutation, animate to inanimate, or the reverse, e.g. Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt. This is by way of a warning. Number 3, invocation of an elemental force, fire, storm, earthquake, flood, tidal wave, plague, as a result of any set of willful acts. 4, necessary atonement by suffering, isolation, migration, or death. So, the act of a child or individual is given a meaning which relates to the whole of nature, and rebounds on the society. Reared on such myths, we go carefully in the world, aware that every unthinking act can have awful consequences. Because we have replaced nature-based myth with a set of fixed prohibitions relating only to other people and unrelated to nature, we have developed destructive and people-centered civilizations and religions. In life and in design, we must accept that immutable rules will not apply, and instead be prepared to be guided on our continuing exploration by flexible principles and directives. Thus, this book emphasizes self-reliance, responsibility, and the functions of living things. Within a self-regulated system on Earth, energy from the sun can be trapped and stored in any number of ways. While the sun burns, we are in an open system. If we don't destroy the Earth, open system energy saving will see us evolve as conscious beings in a conscious universe. A policy of responsibility to relinquish power. The role of beneficial authority is to return function and responsibility to life and to the people. If successful, no further authority is needed. The role of successful design is to create a self-managed system. Moving on to 2.2, here we go, Science and the Thousand Names of God. Although we can observe nature, living systems do not lend themselves to strict scientific definition for two reasons. First, life is always in process of change, and second, life systems react to investigation or experiments. We must always accept, therefore, that there will never be laws in the area of biology. Hard science, such as we apply to material systems, physics, math, inorganic chemistry, studiously avoids life systems, regarding as not quite respectable to those sciences. Botany, zoology, psychology, which try to deal with life. Rigorous scientific method deals with necessity of rigorous control of variables, and in a life system, or indeed any system, this presumes two things that are impossible. 1. That you know all variables, in order to control some of them and measure others, before you start, or 2. That you can in fact control all or indeed any variable without creating disorder in the life system. Every experiment is carried out by people, and the results are imparted to people. Thus, living things conduct and impart knowledge. To ignore life in the system studied, one has to ignore oneself. Life exists in conditions of flux, not imposed control, and responds to any form of control in a new fashion. Living things respond to strict control, either by removal of stimuli or by constant input of stimuli, by becoming uncontrolled, or, in the case of people and rats at least, by dysfunction or by going mad. Experiments, therefore, are not decisive, rigid, or true findings, but an eternal search for the variables that have not been accounted for previously. This is the equivalent of true believers in their empirical approach to the knowledge of God's name. They simply keep changing variables of all possible names until, perhaps, they hit on the right one. Thus does science proceed in biological experiments. Scientists who know and observe don't usually apply their knowledge in the world. Those who act often don't know or observe. This has resulted in several tragic conditions, where productive natural ecosystems have been destroyed to create unproductive cultivated systems, breaking every sane environmental principle to do so. Energy efficient animals, deer, kangaroo, fish, have been displaced by inefficient animal systems, sheep, cattle. Every widespread modern agricultural system needs great energy inputs. Most agriculture destroys basic resources and denies future yields. As Edward Goldsmith makes clear, Thermodynamics or Economics, the ecologist in 1981, many scientists refuse to consider the function of life in such systems. Natural systems disintegrate and decay, producing more and more helpless plants, animals, and people, and the state or the farmer takes over the function of natural processes. The state becomes the father of the orphaned child, the farmer the father of the orphaned chicken. It is only by returning self-regulating function and responsibility to living things, such as people, that a stable life system can evolve. Scientific method is one of the ways to know about the real world, the world we are a part of and live in. Observation and contemplative understanding is another. We can find out about many things, both living and inorganic, by timing, measuring, and observing them. Enough to make calendars, computers, clocks, meters, or rulers, but not ever enough to understand the complex actions in even a simple living systems. I want to pause for just a moment here and just talk about some of the science that he's talking about here. He's making a distinction between hard data, hard science, and life sciences, botany, zoology, psychology, things that aren't hard data. I'm reminded of the double slit experiment in physics. I don't know if anybody knows anything about the double slit experiment in physics, but basically there is a panel with two slits in it, and a scientist shot a photon of light through the slits, and on the back side of that, a pattern would form on the photo paper. When there was a camera observing the photon of light go through the slit, the photo paper would give us one picture. When the scientist removed the camera, we would get a totally different picture on the photo paper. Ultimately, the conclusion of the double slit experiment in physics, and you can go check this behind me, was that the very act of observation changes the problem. We, as humans, are a part of this living organism, and when we observe something, we change its function. Basically, we collapse the wave function and turn it into this binary thing: left, right, black, white, good, bad, etc. The Hawthorne theory in psychology is very similar. The Hawthorne theory in psychology states that if somebody knows they're being watched, they're going to act differently. Right? Let's talk about reality TV. We put a camera on somebody, they start acting like an idiot, or they're become a meme of themselves. Ultimately, they act out in ways that they probably wouldn't if they didn't know they were being watched. It's the same thing as a double slit experiment. Once you know you're being watched or you are observing something, you change the problem. You change what's going on. Just want to kind of make that distinction here because I'm thinking about it right now. Getting back to the meters and rulers, not never enough to understand the complex actions, even in simple living systems. That's right. We will never be able to understand all the complex things that are going on around us all at once that come together to make the whole. You can hit a nail on the head or cause a machine to do so and get a fairly predictable result. Hit a dog on the head and it will either dodge, bite back, or die, but it will never again react in the same way. We can predict only those things we set up to be predictable, not what we encounter in the real world of living and reactive processes. Ecologists and whole systems people struggle to understand open and complex systems, even though they realize that they too are part of the system they study. In fact, given enough limnologists, those who study freshwater lakes and lake organisms, these become the most important factor in the spread of lake organisms via their boats, boots, and nets. It is also time, I feel, for students of communities to form a community of students of communities and keep out of everybody else's hair. Overseas aid is perilously close to being a very good reason for overseas aid to be a necessity, to be necessary. As spies need counter spies, I shudder to think that if we train more brain surgeons, they must cut open more brains in order to support themselves. Imagine. I think it fair to say that if you submit to poverty, you equip yourself to know about poverty, and the same goes for lobotomy. There are several ways not to face life: by taking drugs, watching television, becoming a fakir in a cave, or reading in pure science. All are an abdication of personal responsibility for life on earth, including, of course, one's own life. Value and ethic-free lifestyles are as aberrant in society, in science, as in society. Let me read that one more time. Value and ethic-free lifestyles are as aberrant in science as in society. It is the quantifiability of many scientific concepts that have led to the adoption by scientists, often regardless of the fact that, as they are defined, they correspond to nothing whatsoever in the world of living things. Perverse planning is everywhere obvious. Houses face not the sun, but rather the road. Lawns replace gardens, and trees are planted to be pruned and tended. Make work is the rule, and I suspect that most theoretical scientists inhabit demented domestic environments, just as many psychiatrists are inhabitants of mental institutions. Scientific and non-scientific groups or individuals can make progress in finding solutions to specific problems. The following approaches do very well. Designers, please note. 1. Improving tools or inventing new tools for specific jobs. 2. Collecting a large set of observable observations on occurrences. Let's read that again. 2. Collecting a large set of observations on occurrences, or samples of a set of phenomena, and sorting them on the basis of likeness, unlikeness, by establishing systems and system boundaries, categories, and keys to systems. This process often reveals common characteristics of diverse elements and leads to an understanding of common traits, suggesting, by analogy, strategies in design. Insight, the aha or eureka response to observation. This, as is well recorded, comes to the individual as though by special gift or providence. In fact, it is quite probably the end point of number 2. Number 4, trials. Give it a try and see if it works. This empirical approach simply eliminates those things that don't work. It does not necessarily establish how or why something works, or even if it works in the long run. Number 5, guessing. The best guesses are based on trials that are already known to work. Number 6, observing unique events and taking note of them. The discovery of penicillin. 7, accident. Trials set up for one reason work in a way not predicted or foreseen. Compounds made for one purpose are applied to another. Number 8, imitation. By testing already known effects discovered by others. Number 9, patterning. By seeing a pattern of events or often very different natures and thus producing insights into underlying effects, often preceded by number 2 above, but rare in science. Common sense, often called management in business and natural systems control. This consists of staying with and steering a system or enterprise through constant adjustment to a successful conclusion or result. It also suits evolving systems and is the basis of continuous change and adjustment. Okay, garden fans, we are in this for a little bit. We're getting to 2.3. 2.3 is pretty big. He's going to start distilling this down a little bit more. I think I'm going to save 2.3 and 2.4 for next week. Let me go to the chat. No. I can't go to the chat. That's fine. Any questions, garden fans? Here we go. I appreciate everybody who is here or who has watched tonight. Thank you all for watching. If you are not already, please, as always, like, share, and subscribe. That's what really helps us out. Next Saturday, we're going to be going through 2.3 and 2.4. We're going to start drilling down more into the principles of design as seen by Bill Mollison. He's still kind of getting a little bit preachy here in these first chapters, but what he's telling us is really important to basically change your mind about thinking. He's really trying to steer us away from monoculture and start getting us into this mindset of whole systems. How do we develop an entire system that is going to bring in beneficial insects, be a habitat for birds, is going to bring in the beneficial reptiles? What things are we going to be putting together? And really, he talked a lot about number two, collecting a large set of observations down here earlier. We're going to hear a lot about observation. Bill Mollison loves observation. Um, and I, once again, appreciate y'all for coming out. If you got any questions, just leave it down in the comments below. And I always try to get to the comments a day after I post a video. I will see you all tomorrow with a video of my food forest, and maybe we can talk about some of the things we talked about tonight in our video tomorrow. Appreciate y'all coming. God bless. We'll see you next time.